Good evening, and thank you for joining us. If you're new to our town hall meetings, one thing you can do is, as you're watching, if you post a comment on your Facebook page to this video or YouTube, I can see it. And so therefore, that's the way we can interact. So at any point, if you have any questions about what's going on, please don't hesitate to put in a question. This is a small group, so there's plenty of time for questions. If someone could put a comment into the video that you can hear me, I just want to make sure that there's actually sound coming through. So if somebody could do that for me, and we'll give people a couple more seconds to join us, and then we will get going. All right, so that just went through. So as I said, I just posted a comment asking you to put your questions in whenever you have a chance. And so if you have questions throughout the presentation, we can bring them up like this so everybody can see them. I will make sure I get you your questions. I see them. Even if we miss some during the presentation, I can always come back to them. So this is the first of 4 town halls this school year regarding everything that's going on with NYSED this year, the New York State Education Department, and the priorities that they're putting forward to schools. So this first one is just the introduction to what is going on. And as we move through the school year, we should have more updates about how it's affecting ArcPort and the students of ArcPort now and in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. The 4 topics that we'll be going over are the Blue Ribbon Commission on graduation measures, regionalization discussions, the science of reading, and cell phones in schools. Those are our topics. So let's get going with the first one, which is the Blue Ribbon Commission. The Blue Ribbon Commission was tasked with looking at graduation in New York State for students. And this commission, the NYSED asked this commission to get together. It was made up of parents, students, administrators from across the state. It actually started back in 2000. And they've spent 4 years gathering information, looking at what our students in New York State have to do to graduate with a diploma. I have a link on this, and on this presentation, and I will put the presentation link in the video comments. So if you want to go back, and on this page, there'll be a link to the full document and the website that they created. So 4 years, hundreds of meetings, lots of information gathered, created an 80-page document with suggestions that are boiled down to 4 main recommendations. So I'm going to bring up the first 2 together. The Blue Ribbon Commission has recommended, and these are all recommendations at this point. The next time this commission goes in front of NYSED will be November of next month, November of this year. And they'll be presenting a possible timeline for adoption if NYSED decides to adopt these recommendations. So that's why I said at the beginning, as we move through the school year and we have these town halls, we should have more and more detail. But at this point, they are making 4 main recommendations. So that they are suggesting that the state adopts this portrait of graduate. And it's broken down into these main parts: innovative problem solving, literary across content areas, cultural competence, social emotional competence, effective communication, global citizen, and critical thinking. They're recommending that schools think more along how does content fit within these this portrait of a graduate, rather than the traditional makeup of what classes have been. So this, why I brought this up with redefining credits, which is the next recommendation, is they are thinking pretty specifically about the biggest change in how our classes are organized since 1906, when the seat time requirements for students, the 180 minutes per week, 180 days per year, was first put in place. So they're recommending this portrait of a graduate, and then they are recommending that classes content is defined by the portrait of the graduate. So students, instead of necessarily earning a credit in math and ELA, science, social studies, they'll be showing proficiency in these characteristics of the portrait of the graduate. It's a pretty big change. Most schools, all schools, are waiting to see how they plan on doing that, because, like I said, this is a major change that nobody who has graduated from a New York's public school and is now working in New York public schools can really understand how they're going to roll this out. So those are the first two. They are also recommending that the diploma assessment requirements are dropped from diplomas. Right now in New York State, you have to, it's a 4+1 option. You have to pass 4 Regencies plus one other measure. Most students, the other measure is another Regents exam. Regents requirements have been in place for a very long time. And what they're saying is it should not be the only way to get a diploma in New York State. There should be other options, and they are not saying they are going to take away Regents exams. And from everything that has been presented, that will remain an option for students. But they are saying they want to offer, they do not want it to be a requirement for a student to get a diploma. Every school has students that struggle to pass one Regents exam out of 5, and they can't get that diploma, and it doesn't fit very well with how we're trying to make sure that we're reaching all students. There should be other options. So this is dropping or making it optional to get a diploma with those Regents tests is one of the things they're talking about. And then the last one they're recommending is that we move to one diploma. Right now we have a Regents diploma. Students can earn a local diploma, but that is only for special education students. And then those are the two options. So what they want to break it down to is, if a student is showing that they are moving through the portrait of a graduate and finding that they can be proficient in all of these measures, that they should get a diploma. Students will still have options for endorsements on that diploma, for if they're passing Regents exams, if they have a concentration in math or science, language, CTE endorsements will still be there, but they want to move to a one diploma system. So that kind of sums up the Blue Ribbon Commission. This will have, whether all or just parts of this commission's work are adopted, it will have some pretty dramatic effects on how our students graduate from New York State public schools. If they do adopt these measures, some or all, what most likely will happen is there will be a process for rollout. With changes they've made in the last couple of years, they have introduced changes, made them optional for a couple of years, and then give schools and cohorts of students time to make them permanent. So while some of these things will come through, I think they'll give us time to adjust and make sure that we're ready to put whatever they require us to do in place. So I'll pause there before we move on to the next one. Are there any questions? And I'll remind, if you've just joined us, you can just post in the comment section of the video you're looking at. You can give a thumbs up. Thank you for that one. So we're good here. If you do actually think of a question about the Blue Ribbon Commission as we move on, go ahead and put it in. We can also circle back at the end. I'll make sure that there's a time for questions at the end as well. All right, so that was Blue Ribbon Commission. Next up, we have the regionalization discussion. I want to make sure that I'm very clear that this is not forced mergers or talking about combining schools. This is talking about, and I'll let New York State speak for themselves. So regarding regionalization, they are asking us to gather information. So a systematic approach to continually improve schools and districts is essential for supporting successful outcomes. Regionalization is a mechanism for achieving this goal. It's a collaborative model. So what they are doing at this point is they are organizing this information gathering around the BOCES across the state. So we are part of the Greater Southern Tier BOCES. So for our CTE students, they go to the Wildwood campus in Hornell. There is also a GST BOCES campus in Cooper's Plains. There's a GST BOCES campus in Elmira. GST BOCES, there's 21 school districts from Canasarega all the way down to Waverly and Spencer Van Natten and a lot of the schools in between. That's our BOCES region. So there are 37 BOCES regions across New York State. The state has asked those BOCES, those 37 BOCES, to collect information from school districts regarding what programs are offered, what extracurriculars are offered. And it's this gathering of information which they hope will allow the sharing of more services between districts. So they're going to compile, discuss, analyze this data. And it's to inventory areas of strengths and gaps that might exist to support the needs of schools. And I cannot speak to where this is going to go in the future, but they do quote the fact that they're looking to expand, not necessarily make larger BOCES, but they talk about how effective the BOCES model has been at sharing services. So a lot of people recognize we send our CTE, that's career and technical education students, to the Wildwood campus. This is where students can get certified for welding, building trades. They can even get certified for Cisco, which is computers. They recognize that BOCES does a good job at offering programs regionally that schools could not offer by themselves. And it is really, we would not be able to offer as much as we do to our students if we weren't part of this BOCES. So it gives me hope that they are looking to not necessarily build a larger BOCES, but look at how districts can share services, teachers, classes more effectively in the region to make sure that our students are being offered as much as possible. So this is the information gathering stage. Every school in New York State has to submit their information by November 1st. And then we will see as the governor gets that information going into the budget season. But at this point, they're gathering information. And hopefully in November or December when we have the next town hall, I'll be able to give you a little bit more information. But this is not about forcing schools to combine. This isn't even about, I've heard people talk that it's about forming large centralized high schools. That's not what this is at this point. I'm gonna say again, I take hope from the fact that they're looking to expand the model of sharing that BOCES does so well. Any questions on regionalization at this point? Anything? If you're just joining us, go ahead and post a comment in your video if you have a question. And as I move on, if there's any questions, again, just post them. We'll come back to them at the end. So next up, science of reading. I'm talking about this because this is a big push for New York State regarding how we teach our students, not just reading. I mean, it is called the science of reading, but this is about language skills in general. And one of the reasons I wanted to be sure to talk about this is the last time New York State rolled out major curriculum changes was for Common Core in 2010. And the way they rolled that out created more problems and misinformation. So I want to make sure that we talk about science of reading and get out the information about what it is, because it is a very good program and it makes a lot of sense. So the science of reading is broken down into a couple key areas or key ideas. First, science of reading reflects a body of research. They are looking at education, psychology, linguistics, sociology, speech, language pathology. They're looking at all of these disciplines to better understand and better teach students how to interact, to speak, to read, to write. And it just makes sense. Not every student learns to read the same way, to write the same way, to speak the same way. And so it's nice that they are expanding this into, it's not a one-size-fits all program. Traditionally, the next key idea, the science of reading informs instruction from early childhood through adolescence for all populations. One of the things that, if we simplify what we've done in the past, there was this idea that in PK3, give or take, you learn to read. And then fourth and on, you read to learn. What science of reading is saying is it's both. You can read to learn even in kindergarten. One of my favorite things to do is go in and read to pre-K students. They aren't reading, but they're learning about stories. They're learning about the parts of stories. They're learning how to predict what's going to happen next in the story. They are reading, listening to learn at that point. And on the flip side, once you learn to read, you are always learning new and complex ways of understanding the written language, the spoken language. So really they're saying it's not learn to read, then you read to learn. You are always doing both throughout your life. And that's a nice way to think about it, because you just don't stop learning to read at the third grade. You go on from there. So it's looking at more, this is an ongoing process. Our 12th graders can still learn more about the spoken, written, and read language. The next key idea, the science of reading emphasizes, and this is the last one, it really looks at the big 6 skills. So the first one, oral language, includes speaking and listening, and providing foundation. So when you think about our youngest learners, again, reading the stories in pre-K in kindergarten, in first grade, that oral language, that is still part of the process of learning to read and learning and growing to be more adept in language. The next one, phonological awareness. I had to look this one up. Phonological awareness, think rhyming words. So where the next one, phonics, is the sounds of language, the k, at. Phonological awareness is the patterns. It's how it sounds outside of the sound, if that makes sense. And depending on when you learned how to read in New York State, you either were, it's kind of swung back and forth. It was either totally phonics, which was all sounds, or some of us went through the whole reading phase where it was really not a lot of phonics instruction and just more sight word, and that's how you learn to read. What they're doing is they're kind of bringing both together and saying that you can't have one without the other if we're going to build effective readers. Next one, comprehension. And I'll bring it back to that kindergarten student. They might not be reading themselves, but they are learning comprehension skills through listening. Your senior, your 11th grader, they can read, they can still get better at comprehension. Fluency, and I will go to, they define fluency as being able to understand the text, to speak, to write with accuracy and expression. Those are huge things. I mean, we can all remember, whether you would liked it or not, whether we were sweating having to get up in front of a class and read our project or read a paper. That's a fluency. It's being able to get your message across, whether it's reading, writing, or speaking. And then finally, vocabulary. And that is an ongoing process throughout your life. You leave high school, you go to college, you're learning more vocabulary. You leave high school, you go into the workforce. There's a whole new set of vocabulary that you have to learn in that process. So that's the science of reading. And I'm really excited about it. It does a better job of really looking at the whole student and how they can learn in so many different ways. So what I'm going to do before we jump on to the last one is I think I need to finish my slides. So I'm going to give everybody a chance to catch up and to see if they have any questions before we talk about cell phones in schools. So I just need to fix these slides. And remember, if you would like to, you can just jump into the comments to add something. And I just have to fix 2 more things. I did this presentation on Tuesday and I forgot to fix these. All right, I should be ready to go. All right, cell phones in schools, hot topic. All right, there we go. Okay, so cell phones in schools. This has been one of our governors, Governor Kathy Hochul's main points of trying to address since the beginning of last school year. So she has said this many different ways. Our job is to raise adults, fully functional adults who emerge from childhood with social skills that they develop in school settings. They are being denied that now because the cell phone has taken over human interactions. We can stop this now. We can work with our kids who have already had to deal with the stress and anxiety and all the pressures. We can help them. Now, whether you agree, disagree with that statement, it is one of our governor's priorities. she came out very strong at the beginning of last year, talking about a complete ban of cell phones within schools for students. At that time, she was like, they can have a flip phone if they want to. She's walked that back a little bit, but I don't think we are going to get out of this school year, this budget cycle, this term for our senators and assemblymen without some type of guidance being handed to schools. And I will post the link to this presentation in the comments, so you can always come back. And all of this data is all linked if you just click on them when you're in the presentation to the story if you want to look more. But we really have three competing perceptions of cell phones in schools. That first statistic, 72% of high school teachers say cell phones distraction is a major problem in the classroom. Okay. Middle one, most teens say the benefits of smartphones outweigh the harms for people their age. And then the last one is a set of data from a research paper that it asks parents to select why they might want their students to have cell phones in school. And the number one, 78% of parents picked if there's an emergency. And so there are these three very different views. And I'm not going to say, please understand, I'm not saying all parents think that way, all teachers, all students, but this is a complex situation. And I would rather, as a school district, work together with our teachers, with our faculty and staff, with our students, with our parents and guardians to find a solution that works for us rather than wait for the state to tell us something. So they will tell us something at some point. What I have been talking to the Board of Education about, and they are very interested in this topic, and how cell phones do absolutely affect our students during the school day and after. So I will be proposing at our board meeting next week that we start setting up a series of dates for the collection of really what are the opinions of our faculty and staff. What are the opinions of our students, ArcPort students, and what are the opinions of ArcPort parents and guardians regarding cell phones? We have to start by understanding where everybody is before we can even talk about possible solutions. Because whatever we choose to do has to work for those three groups of people. So that will start. I'm going to propose the timeline at the board meeting next week, hopefully starting to gather information early November through the holiday season, then bring together a working group of faculty, staff, students, parents, and guardians to brainstorm and pull together some recommendations to be put to the school board about what we might be able to do in our board. So that is the last slide. If you have any questions, go ahead, put them in the chat. Pretty straightforward. Like I said at the beginning, this was the first informational session about these. As we move through the school year, these talks will have more details. So when we come back, I think the next one is planned for the first week in December. I hope to be able to, specifically, let's just talk about cell phones in schools. I would be talking about information we had gathered to that point about where are the opinions about cell phones in our court. And I'd be able to bring that information to all of you that join. And that will be the same for all those topics. So that's the end of the talk. I really appreciate everybody that joined us tonight. This will stay posted to our Facebook page and YouTube page. So if anybody missed it, you hear that anybody wanted to see it, they can find it there. And as we wrap up, what I'm going to do is, while I'm seeing if there are any questions from anyone, I am going to post the presentation. So don't hesitate to put a comment in, put a question in. If you don't have any, thank you for joining us, and I hope you have a great night.